What's up guys, my name is PJ. On this particular series, I want to recommend one book, and the book is chosen to help that individual from a certain type see their own blind spot or come to terms, come to peace with a certain aspect of themselves that is hard to accept. I will release one video a week about each different type, and without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started with type 1. First, before I go into the book recommendations, it's good to look at what the type 1 is having a hard time seeing. So the type 1 personality is a personality that seeks to be the perfect person, seeks to be the perfect example of how to be a civilized, good person. So whatever the value system is in a certain place of what is perfect, what is good, they seek to be that and embody that. And through the search of being this perfect person, a lot of times what tends to happen is that they are so hard on themselves. They are so critical of themselves. Because ultimately, if we have an image of perfection, if we have an ideal, we're always falling short of that ideal. It's not bad to have an ideal, but it's bad if we keep always thinking, wow, look at me, I'm still not that ideal that I seek to be. So the type 1 personality has a very, very, very loud inner critic that is always talking to them. You're not good enough. You're not perfect enough. You're not, you haven't reached the ideal yet. And you are still not at the bottom of it good enough. Excuse me. So when it comes to the book recommendations, I think, or really the main book, I'm going to recommend one book to type 1 Enneagram individuals. And that the reason I've chosen that book is because if the message you're constantly receiving is that I'm not good enough, is that I'm not perfect, then what you need to have is a book that shines a light on your own worthiness, that shines a light on what you're not seeing about yourself, and ultimately helps you come to a greater measure of acceptance of yourself. The book I'm going to recommend today is from an individual that she herself has said that she's a type 1. And this book is phenomenal for type 1s, and I'm pretty sure she wrote it before she realizes she's a type 1. And this book is by Brene Brown, who is a shame researcher. She studies shame. She studies the things that get in the way of us experiencing joy, sense of worthiness. She has a very good saying that she says, when we don't believe in our own worthiness, we're always going to be hustling for our worthiness. And how many times have you felt that? And how many times a type 1 individual feels that in general? That I'm not worthy, let me work for it. Let me show other people why I am worthy. Let me bring them to see my worthiness, even though I'm not going to see it myself. You know, basically what she's saying is that we're going to hustle for it. We're going to say, let me show you that I'm good enough. And that's a vicious cycle that none of us really want to be on. You know, it's a never-ending hustle to prove our worthiness versus recognizing the fact that we are already worthy, that we are already good, that we are already perfect, even though we might feel imperfect. Not perfect like holier than that, but like we are good, inherently good. You know, that's a very healing message for type 1 individual to read, but really ultimately all of us, because ultimately when we study Enneagram, it's like these types just show certain tendencies in an amplified way for all of us to see. For example, I'm a type 9, so the type 9 tendency is one that it puts its own needs so deep down that it forgets it in order to not ask for it, because it doesn't want to ruin the peace, the harmony of the surrounding environments. So that although that is amplified in a type 9 individual, but that is a tendency that a lot of us fall into at times, or we might fall into at different levels of feeling well, feeling healthy. So the book that I wanted to recommend for type 1s is The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. In this book, she being a type 1 herself, yeah, and being a shame researcher, it's so handy because type 1s use the inner critic within a type 1 uses really nasty, vicious tools like shame and guilt and overly criticizing yourself. It does that in order to push the type 1 individual to perfection. Now, Brené Brown, the tagline of this book basically is let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. Your guide to a wholehearted life. And basically, the way she gathered her research as a shame researcher, from my understanding, is that she sat down and interviewed like thousands of people, and from there, and her goal was to figure out what it looks like to live what she calls a wholehearted life, a full life, experiencing deep connection, deep levels of joy, fulfillment, peace, things like that. And one thing that she realized after interviewing so many people is that she realized that the people who lived that way, who lived that wholehearted life, had certain characteristics, and the people who struggled to have that kind of a life, that wholehearted life as she calls it, had certain things that got in the way of them living that wholehearted life, that life that you wake up every morning and you're excited to be a participant in that life, to live that life. And one of the main things that got in the way of that was, shame. And shame is so prevalent in type 1 individuals. And, me being a 9 myself and knowing that I have the 2 wings, if you were familiar with the Enneagram and you look at the Enneagram diagram, the 9 is at the top, so it's like at the 12 o'clock, let's say, and the 1 is at it's basically right side if you're looking at it. So you have the 1 wing, the 2 numbers on the side of your number or any type are the wings of that type, and 1 might be more dominant, but nonetheless you have aspects of both. So for me, I do have that 1 wing, and that 8 wing also, but like that 1 wing, the way it shows itself for me is this constant desire to improve myself, this desire for self-help and self-improvement, and it's a never-ending journey. But a lot of times I feel like I should have reached the destination by now because I've been on this journey for so long. And then what happens is that I feel guilt, I feel shame, I feel like, man, I should have been ahead. I should have been further along than I am now. So reading this book has been super helpful for me because it talks about how, when we are unaware of our own inherent worthiness, we hustle for it, like I said. And this book helps us, basically it highlights Brené Brown's journey herself to finding her wholehearted life. That's a difficult word to say sometimes, but that wholehearted life. And she says, this is not a direct quote, but it's a paraphrase of like, until we go through the mud, until we go through what she calls like the swamp of these things that we don't want to talk about, like shame. These things are going to get in the way of us living that true, authentic, wholehearted life that we want, that we all seek to live. And it's such an important message for type 1s to hear because, as a type 1 individual, and this is actually something that I've came to realize too, like, if a type 1 individual can understand and can reach this level of seeing their own inherent worthiness, then we all can, because nobody is as hard on themselves as a type 1 individual. So if they can crack that code of worthiness, if they can discover that inherent worthiness, we all have hope. We all do. And I've been in part of different groups recently where I've established like a men's group. We meet once a week, and I found that so many, in that case, so many men, but so many people in general have a hard time, including myself, have a hard time sometimes believing in that inherent worthiness. So when you look at a type 1 individual who has reached that place, who has realized their seeking of perfection, their never-ending pursuit of being the ideal. A person that has realized the inherent trap in that search, and has come to a place where it's like, where they're like, I'm good now. I'm good as I am. Yes, I can improve. Yes, I can become better. Yes, I can seek to make the environment around me perfect. But it's not like if it's not that yet, then I'm bogged down by so much shame, by so much guilt. No, like you can look at it like a game. Like I played a game of seeking to improve myself. I played a game of seeking to make the environment around me perfect, or be perfect at my craft, or whatever I do. But it's a game. I have fun with it while recognizing my inherent worthiness. And those are things that this book really will help individuals find. So for this first, I'm going to try to make a series of book recommendations for each type on the Enneagram. And this book, I'm pretty sure, is recommended to by so many people to type 1 individuals. And I was recently listening to a different Enneagram book, an audiobook called The Enneagram of Belonging. And Brene Brown had written the what do you call it, like the preface, or I forgot what it's called, the exact wording, but she wrote the introduction to it, or so to speak. And she says that was when kind of like, the author, I forgot his name right now, but the person who wrote the Enneagram of Belonging, his work helped Brene become more enthused by the Enneagram and more invested in it. So then she took a test and found that she's a type 1, and then she looked up like book recommendations for type 1s, and then boom, she came full circle to her book. And I thought that's like such a cool story, because ultimately, like, the Enneagram just helps us become aware of our own patterns quicker, right? And I think the goal of self-help should be, in a lot of cases, to help us shorten the time and reduce the amount of heartache and pain that we have to go through to find certain patterns, to become aware of certain patterns, certain destructive patterns that we keep playing out, certain cycles that we keep playing out. The goal of self-help should be to help us become aware, especially the goal of Enneagram in particular, should be to help us become aware of that quickly and save us some time. Doesn't mean we're not going to go through any pain now that we know Enneagram. The inherent, the journey of cutting away everything that is not our authentic best self, getting to our inherent worthiness, that journey requires us to change and let go of certain patterns that are not our authentic patterns, that the patterns of our personality and conditioning and programming. It requires us to let those go. But it's hard sometimes to let those go, because even though they might seem bad, like having a loud inner critic that always criticizes everything you do, yes, it sounds bad, and you would think like, oh, once I become aware of that, I would let that go like that. But it doesn't work like that, because within that pain, sometimes we're addicted to it. Not addicted to pain, but we believe there's something still there for us, meaning that if I let this inner critic go, for example, for type 1, then what if I lose everything I've worked so hard to accomplish, because we think that inner critic was the thing that helped us get those results. But a lot of times you don't have to punish yourself to, you know, do amazing things. You can do this, you know, two amazing things. You can do the same thing, let's say, from two different motivating factors. You know, you can let's say you are a type 1 individual and you want to lose weight. Your inner critic might say in your ear, and I'm gonna, you know, say it kind of bluntly like that, but it might be like, oh, you're so fat, like you should go to the gym. And it's this like motivation through shame, right? And yes, that might work and might make you go to the gym, but even when you achieve the result of, let's say, your ideal weight, you know that you were motivated by fear and shame and these like dirty tactics to get you there. Now, that action of wanting to go to the gym and lose weight and reach that, so quote unquote ideal weight, that could have also been motivated. You could have used love, let's say. You could have used, you know, encouragement, positive ways of getting yourself to do that. Saying, like, thinking about, man, I would just feel so good if I was a little bit, you know, more, had more mobility, had less body fat so that my back didn't hurt, you know, or things like that. Like, you could use positive ways, you know, not like, oh, I'm so fat and I'm so awful, then I gotta go to the gym. No, like, I'm awesome, I'm good, I'm worthy as I am, and there are these positive things that I also could seek to have from a place of accepting myself as I am now, while still playing the game and seeking for a better future, a better me, you know, but not being like, unless I am there, unless I have reached that destination, then until then I'm not good enough, you know. Which she, this page I was reading today was talking about how sometimes we think that we're not worthy of self-love, because we say like, I can't really love myself because fill in the blank, I'm not that enough, meaning that like I'm not pretty enough yet, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not successful enough, I'm not rich enough, I'm not talented enough. And she goes like through a list before she introduces what she calls shame resilience. But basically what she's saying is like, a lot of times we have this mentality of like, I can't be satisfied, I can't be happy, I can't be fulfilled yet, you know, I can't love myself yet. I have to reach this goal, then I can come back and love myself, accept myself. But that is such an awful trap that, you know, the type 1 is more prone to fall into than anybody, than the rest of us. I would go ahead and say probably type 3 could also be like that, but I feel like type 1 is definitely the person that's most likely to fall into that trap. And so ultimately I wanted to make this video, recommend that book if you haven't checked it out yet, and to our type 1 listeners, because my goal with these videos is to help people live a better life, live a life that is, as Brene would call it, a wholehearted life, a life that is filled with more joy, a life that you would wake up in the morning and you won't want to go back to sleep because you're not dreading the life that you have to live. You know, a life that you every day feel like you get to live it. You know, I wanna help you feel that every day. I want to help you feel that joy every day. So hopefully you check out that book. You can find a link to that book in the description as well. And hopefully you get a lot of value from it, and hopefully you can make your own journey to living a wholehearted life. Again, this was PJ. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will talk to you in the next part of the book recommendations for each Enneagram type series. Thank you so much. Have a good day.